107 Wednesday night. Gary, what's going on?
Ready to do some human action?
I am ready.
All right.
Human Action is in Mises, his famous work.
His magnum opus, yeah.
It is kind of interesting you've never read this front to back before. I am kind of shocked. You've got some books that you've taken down,
hmm
and this not being one of them is a bit surprising to me.
Well, I agree with you. And as I said in previous episodes, it's quite shameful. I am embarrassed that I haven't read it cover to cover yet. And as I'm doing that now, I realized what I was missing out on by reading just excerpts and different passages from it, albeit however long they were. It still doesn't point to something or indicate what I was missing. And what I was missing, as I have come to acknowledge as I'm reading through it now, is, and I'm just over 200 pages in, but what's fascinating about it is it's so dense. It tackles, and Mises in a very Germanic way, because he was German, well, Austrian to be exact. He in a very Germanic way, he tackles all of these topics. And at first, when you're reading it, it sounds like a kind of stream of conscious of an economic genius because he tackles everything from, and he has such a breadth of knowledge.
Mhm.
And it's not just an inch deep and a mile long, it's an inch wide, or it's an inch deep, and like it's more like 90 miles deep, and it's about thousands of kilometers wide. I mean, just the immense intellect of this man. And he talks about everything from taxation policy under the Turks all the way through to, you know, defining what praxeology is, of course, as a central ideological tenet through which it's the conduit by which he approaches and does economics, all the way through to, I mean, he talks about Aristotle and Augustine and Aquinas. He talks about, I mean, the subject matters are so varied, but what you realize is that as you're reading it, it seems like it would be disjointed, but it's all connected. Um, so that's, I suspect, the hallmark of brilliance.
So, what are
I
some
find it as
what are
such.
some takeaways that obviously you've seen a bunch of excerpts before that, but something you get from reading it front to back that you might not fully get
Well, I get
just from glimpses.
I got a renewed sense of the value of praxeology as that philosophy and disposition by which economics ought to be done. It's very deductive. And as such, it just starts with the basic a priori tenet that humans act, and we act in such a way that we deploy the means at our disposal and we direct them in such a way to so as to attain an end. This appears quite self-evident, but when you consider how, especially, and Mises treats this, how modern economic systems have treated the actions of individuals, especially individuals working within, cooperating within society, and they do quite the opposite of what praxeology demands. They have a value system and they create, or more so inductively, look at human action and the workings of society through that lens of the value system, and then manipulate their study of, for example, what could be everything from monetary policy to social interaction to what is deemed as being of value in the commodity space, whatever it might be. It could be education, it could be schooling, whatever's deemed of value. And then they twist that so as to arrive at their ends. And Mises is adamant that, and he uses the German term Wertfreiheit, which means that when you engage in economic thought and analysis, it has to be without valuation, without a, applying a could be even moral, psychological, ethical, um, religious terms of value onto economic study. Now, that doesn't mean in the end that you can't have your own valuations, but in doing economics as it is that study of human action, what you're looking at is rational man who deploys reason, not as a perfect, fully knowledgeable being, an omniscient one that uses reason in almost a flawless manner. And so acts in such a way and engages in behaviors that are ultimately deemed of the greatest good in a utilitarian sense, but more so human person and rational being that deploys logic and reason most of the time quite faulty or in a subjective and faulty manner, but nonetheless does so in a universal application of reason and logic to use again means to attain an end. And the way in which man interacts as such as a free individual within society, he did. I don't know if you know this, but he almost titled human action social cooperation, and that is so central to what he's going at. Like there was another. You asked me for other insights. Just the idea of championing and then extrapolating or extending from the subjective value theory and the marginal revolution, which just simply amounted to the discovery of Karl Menger and then his kind of protege student Eugen von Bavarick, and then picked up again by Mises and Hayek and Rothbard and the other giants of the Austrian school, namely that again the value of things as it was once thought even by classical economists like Ricardo and Smith and to Marx, where they were in agreement, is not derived from the amount of work, labor, sweat equity, time that's put into the production of a good. The value of a thing is derived through subjective valuation. You see, so because I could work tirelessly and pour everything I have and all my energy and expenditure and means and resources into creating something as beautiful as the Sistine Chapel ceiling or the Last Judgment. And guess what? It's going to suck and not even come to approach that which what the genius, and one of the subject matters he goes into is genius, the genius that was Michelangelo and his output. So with that, we can conclude a number of things that were erroneous and wrong from the onset about other economic systems, ideologies that are outside of Mises's political response that he sees as the most becoming or fitting and in the Latin sense conviens or appropriate for what he believes is his right understanding of economics and human action, and that's liberalism. Don't think of liberalism as progressivism in the U.S. sense, but
Right.
rather very limited, constrained government. He did admit that the state needed to exist. At least he argued. It would be his later disciple Murray Rothbard who said no, it needs to be eradicated. But he has very extraordinarily condemnatory language as it pertains to the state and bureaucrats and government interference and regulation in the free operation of free individuals. The last thing I would say is the most profound revelation for me reading it all the way through is there's been times in which I've commented on the genius of Murray Rothbard and how many times he referred to the entrepreneur as being a miracle maker, and that the market, the free market, is really a miracle in and of itself. What I find so profound about Mises is that, of course, he alludes to such things and he expounds upon them, but I see within him a recognition of the beauty of the human person acting in freedom, deploying this beautiful gift of logic and reason, and he he's really intoxicated by the ways in which humans are oriented to be social, to construct institutions that have a long span, a lifespan and duration for their own happiness. And what he calls, he constantly alludes to this idea of human action being directed toward satisfying or eliminating the sense of natural uneasiness in us. And that uneasiness could be physical in terms of our desire to continue to live and thrive in a physiological sense. It could be emotional, spiritual, psychological, intellectual, and we act in all these ways, and he's fascinated by looking at that. And then it's from those observations that he's able to then deduce that there are particular laws in economics, like the law of diminishing return or marginal utility. And I know that I understand why um economists that are introduced to Mises after they've studied economics for a long time will will want to just throw out all the philosophy and all of the real wisdom that's in the book that might seem not to pertain to supply and demand curves and the like, and a mathematical model, which he says there's no such good thing as a mathematical model because there's no constants involved here within the study of human action. But be that as it may, I really love the philosophical insights and the underpinning. I'd go so far as to say when I read Mises, I read an economist who writes and is of the level of genius of Thomas Aquinas, but just in the study of human action. I don't know if I could give Mises a bigger compliment than that.
Was he religious?
He was agnostic. He's agnostic. And I did lament on by the way, as I'm reading Human Action, I'm chronicling my reading both for myself and my Twitter audience or anyone who's listening to us now in our Hot Water History audience and then beyond, hopefully as we continue to grow and have bigger outreach. But I'm tweeting different passages that I find to be of great value on my Twitter account, Hot Water History, and I take a snippet of the actual text and I just put a little comment if it needs any commentary. It's usually this is just profound or this is amazing or I can't believe the genius here. But I do add some stuff and I hashtag it under Read Human Action. So if anyone wants to follow along just to keep up. But I forgot where was I going with that, Charlie? You asked something else.
I asked if he was religious.
Oh, right. Oh, very good. And yeah, I get the sense, and it's not just the sense because he actually talks about it, of how, and this is lamentable from the Catholic perspective, that he read a number of the papal encyclicals that could be easily seen as not conceding toward understanding that socialism is a viable economic institution, or that there are within the Catholic Church's social doctrine and social teaching some winks and nods to socialism. But can we say that the popes were playing footsie a little bit with socialism? And certainly when you have a pope like Francis, although obviously Mises was long gone by the time of Jorge Bergoglio's ascension to the papacy and the papal throne and the Petrine office. But yeah, he saw that the supposedly great and informed leaders of the church were pulled. I would argue that they were pulled into trying to comment on first things that they were and should have remained ignorant on. So, and this is the point of Tom Woods in The Church and the Market, namely that if the popes, I the popes particularly I think after Vatican I, if there was going to be, I think there is some validity to this charge. After the First Vatican Council, there were nefarious actors and elements within the church that wanted to use the Petrine office as the monopolistic megaphone for their own predilections, their own biases, their own ideological and philosophical agendas, and the economic systems that they preferred. And so they pushed and pulled and cajoled the popes to speak on matters that they ought not to have, and then render value judgments, which sounds like moral doctrine and teaching on matters that, again, they were generally ignorant, of which they were generally ignorant. So I feel as though, and it's lamentable that Mises would have, if he understood the true doctrine of the church rather than these, let's say, jaunts and attendant tangents of Catholic social teaching that the popes felt empowered or required to take, then I don't know, maybe he would have converted and come to be a theist
Yeah.
in the Catholic sense.
How is the actual writing? Is it, I assume it's pretty dense.
Yeah, there are a lot of
Did,
Germanic Teutonic sentences in it.
yeah. Does he make any jokes or anything?
Oh, he does. There's humor.
Okay.
There's sometimes I've laughed out loud while he, because,
Really?
oh, sure. Yeah, I can't remember an instance, but oh, he has this great series of passages on history as a discipline,
Okay.
how an economist seeks or ought to seek cognition, that is more so knowledge,
Mhm.
and the historian seeks understanding. Um, and that history is not by its nature a Wertfreiheit, then namely a valueless enterprise or um, discipline. So I found that to be consistent with how I've always approached history as a discipline.
Cool.
Yeah. There are just a ton of revelations in there, and I just don't know how you can read that work and not just be swept up in both his profound intellect, but more so, as I said, his controlled, scholarly, but also at the same time effusive respect for the human person. He's a he's a humanist. I deep um I really think he's a humanist, and he sees the human person and his operation within society as marvelous.
Awesome.
Yeah, and then I'll conclude with one thing, just an easy way to remember the subjective value theory is he constantly references the idea that when we're studying economics, the needs and actions of individuals and even individuals acting within society cannot be deduced by using cardinal numbers, but ordinal numbers. Now, what of course that means is that mathematically oriented economists, even of the classical school, would like to ascribe certain units, numerical units, to, for example, how someone determines the utility of a thing, like this many utils. Well, Mises says you can't do that because how are you to observing the actor or the person engaged in agency? You can't then say, oh, that person is describing 8 utils to going to work in the morning. That's absurd. What you can deduce is that once the person, as you're observing them, gets up and goes to a job, they're obviously in order of importance and exercise of agency, putting that above staying in bed. You see?
Yeah.
So it could be an ordinal number, but it can't be a cardinal number of valuation. And I love that. That's just and just everything in the book smacks true, right?
Hmm. Yeah, those are the best books. Just History of the
Yeah.
United States tried to aim at that, right?
Oh, sure. And frankly, I'm glad you asked that or touched upon that. I was at times smiling during reading the first, what is it, fifth of Human Action or fourth of Human Action, and how Mises has this praxeological approach of deduction. We're going to essentially know of what humans are aiming at by the fruit of their works or what results. And I was pondering all the different times in the book where we took exactly that approach and applied it to historical analysis. A case in point would be you want to know the cause of the Civil War. In fact, it's of course a topic because the dimwit in diapers keeps talking about it, and then other ones, and like Nikki Haley has no idea, even though she's from South Carolina where the war began. Uh, the causes of the war when she's asked, and she stands there dumbfounded as if Vivek Ramaswamy asked her if there's any of the provinces in Ukraine that she's going to send people over to die for, whatever. And she has no idea. Same thing here. But when we were talking about the cause of the Civil War, and our basic point was, well, look at the legislation that was passed by the Union and the Northern Congress as it was just unimpinged, free to act of its own accord without any Southern filibustering in the Senate, for example. So it passes the anti-Cooley laws. It passes the Pacific Railway Act. It passes all these things that would have never flown and been passed when there were Southern representatives, particularly in the Senate. Now they can do it in unfettered fashion. And so they get all of the tariff policy and all of the industrial policy and all the things, including, of course, the conduct of the war that would allow the Republican Party to be that arm within the government to provide protectionism and largesse and benefits to their own interests and benefactors. Yeah, I think Mises would like that analysis.
Is that it on human action?
Yeah.
I've been itching to talk Bitcoin.
Okay.
I think this is one of the first times we've talked about Bitcoin on the podcast. I think it's been mentioned before.
Sure. Of course.
So you wanted me to sell you on this COPA trial, but go on. What were you gonna say?
Oh, I was just gonna say I'm ready to be sold. I mean, I know the basics of it, but if you could inform the audience and then go into why we should be paying much more attention to it than even I am.
Okay, so for anyone that's interested, first of all, Kurt Walker Jr. is way better at explaining this. He's literally his title, Gary. Imagine having this title as your job.
Mm.
Chief Historian Officer. That's his title.
I can only aspire to be something close like, the official historian of the Run Your Mouth podcast with Robbie Bernstein.
Exactly. That's a part-time gig. This is a
Yeah,
full-time
that's
gig.
right. Very part-time.
Yeah. Anyways, so there's this huge trial, COPA versus Craig Wright. Let's take a couple steps back here. I would argue that 2024, so far, it's looking like one of those years where it's a peak year to be a conspiracy theorist. I haven't felt this way about conspiracy theories since
Since 2020.
since
That far
20,
ago. Or that long ago.
20 I was more so thinking about the internet censorship.
Mm.
And now that Twitter has been released somewhat, 2016 to 2018, when YouTube was kind of the Wild West, I haven't felt this way about the internet since right now. So it's an exciting time to be wearing a tinfoil hat. Anyways, I think the biggest conspiracy of our times is the conspiracy against Bitcoin.
Mm.
The fact that this invention has been around for 15 years now, and it really hasn't improved anyone's life. Like if you think about, except for those that bought low and sold high, the pump and dumps, but I'm talking about the real economy, goods and services, your trip to the grocery store, your trip to the gas station, buying something online. Bitcoin hasn't improved any of that in 15 years. And this is supposed to be one of the greatest breakthroughs of our time. Anyways, when you think of Bitcoin, what do you think of the three letters for that?
BTC.
BTC, right? Well, there's others within the Bitcoin space that would argue, hint, hint, that BSV is the true Bitcoin, that the original white paper produced by Satoshi Nakamoto in 2009 makes, and there's a bunch of technological reasons why. The main issue being that Bitcoin is supposed to be a digital cash system, that it's not supposed to be just
A store of value.
a store of value. It's not supposed to be online gold, essentially. Craig Wright believes, or has said, I am Satoshi Nakamoto. He claims that he's the creator of Bitcoin. All of this, most people don't even know who Craig Wright is. If you walk down the street, he could be the greatest inventor of our times. Most people don't know who he is right now. So that's already interesting enough. But he's currently being sued, and the court case is set to start February 5th.
And this is in Florida, Charlie?
I don't know where the case,
Okay.
the last one was in Florida, but I don't know if this one is. That was Kleiman versus Wright. And that was interesting because the big psyop at that time, because most people don't even know about that trial. It's the biggest, I believe it's the biggest civil suit in world history as far as dollar amount. But most people don't even know about that one.
And Craig Wright wasn't even claimed to be a rapist like Trump was.
Yeah.
No E. Jean Carroll there down there.
But most people, the psyop at that time was Kyle Rittenhouse. That's when the big, so he wasn't, Kleiman versus Wright wasn't even the biggest court case at the time to most people.
Right. I remember.
It was all Rittenhouse on the news, while this stuff is stuff that, I mean, the Rittenhouse stuff matters, but this stuff could be.
It was a distraction, in other words, was what you're saying.
Sure. So the new court case is COPA versus Craig Wright. Craig Wright, one guy, he thinks he's Satoshi Nakamoto. All of these guys, do you know what COPA stands for?
No.
COPA stands for the Crypto Open Patent Alliance.
Okay.
And part of the reason why, I'll tell you who it's made up of. Some people involved. Jack Dorsey, Mark Zuckerberg. So think about that. Those two guys, former arch enemies, now coming together to take down this one inventor. And then also Coinbase. There's some other exchanges. I think Michael Saylor might be involved as well. Some big BTC guys, all on the same team versus Craig Wright. And the case is that they have to prove that Craig Wright is not Satoshi Nakamoto. So they have to prove a negative.
Okay.
And
how are they going to be able to do that?
I have no idea. Proving a negative is almost impossible.
Sure.
Especially with something think about, these people aren't, like, Craig Wright knows way more than any judge is going to know about crypto. Even the guys that, so it's going to be all of these crypto court cases are very interesting because a lot of the times you get a judge or a jury who just has no idea.
Well, how is that different from any other court case?
I guess that's a good point. But I'm gonna try to articulate the reason why all of these guys hate us, or all of these guys hate Craig Wright. But I would argue they hate us.
Whose side are you on, Charlie?
I'm on the BSV side. I believe that Craig Wright is Satoshi Nakamoto, which is a super controversial take. Like, we talk about conspiracy theories. most people are okay with the moon landing these days, except for Matt Walsh, which
Yeah.
was a ridiculous
Tuck.
little segment that he had. But most people are cool. There's a lot of conspiracy theories that most people have gone to accept. I don't even think Pearl Harbor is as hot of a take as it probably was, as it definitely was. These conspiracy theories, they lose their salt a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and it becomes a little less risky to accept them.
Yeah.
Believing that Craig Wright is Satoshi Nakamoto is like, I don't even know. It's like 9/11 October 2001.
Mm.
Like there's people that are out there. There's not a whole lot of them. They're
Yeah.
pretty they're pretty loud. Like they're pretty sure of themselves to be taking on uh, an opinion that so few want to take, and there's so much, I guess, social consequence for accepting it.
Yeah.
So February 5th, Copa versus Wright, he offered publicly to settle, and they're not taking it. So a lot of people are thinking that it was a 4D chess play to give, because it is interesting to a judge thinking, well, why wouldn't you just take this settlement? I don't know if he would have to. I haven't looked enough into the settlement
Yes.
to see the details of if he would admit that he's not Satoshi Nakamoto. I don't think that was part of it, part of the settlement, because they're like, we're coming after you. So even to the outsiders now, it seems a little personal, that there seems like more than this. I wanted to get back to the point about why someone like Mark Zuckerberg would not like Craig Wright. So one of the major technological differences about BSV as compared to BTC, as compared to, let's say, a credit card company, is its ability to, one, make a lot of microtransactions per second. So the idea, I don't know if it's at this number yet, but BSV can do, because of the size of the data blocks, can do around, I'm going to make this number up, but let's say it's 100,000 transactions per second. I know Visa is around 24,000. And I
Mm-hmm.
know BTC is around seven
Mm.
transactions per second. So this
Yes.
is the problem with BTC, is that it has a scaling issue, meaning that you can't run the world on BTC, similar to how people today run the world. I guess you could say Visa, you can do 24,000 things at once.
So, and you're saying that also the Lightning Network that's adopted to, in a sense, allow transactions to occur before they're put on the blockchain and thus speed up exchange through the use of Bitcoin, BTC, is not taking and is a kind of is a failure. It's an add-on that's not working and never
Right.
going to work.
I don't know if it's never going to work, but the problem with these BTC guys is they're stuck because they're in a tough place. Because if they say, hey, we need to become scalable,
Mm,
everyone's just going to come to BSV. Like the miners are just going to, they have to hold this weird position that scaling doesn't matter really, or that it
okay.
wasn't part of they have to hold a false belief that it really wasn't part of the design.
Mm,
And also, people, they get lost. So Bitcoin, two parts, bit and coin. People get lost in the coin. People get lost in the prices, crypto up. I invested in crypto. It went from $10 to $100. Sweet. I made 10x. The part that a lot of people forget is the bit. Being able to transfer data using microtransactions ruins the entire, I guess you could say, Silicon Valley model of how things work right now, where they collect our data, the app's free, Facebook's free to use, then they sell it off to advertisers. If
hmm.
you had the possibility to, let's say, hey, you can't charge for my data, or hey, I'll charge you a penny for me to be on here for this much time. That completely changes the game as far as how we interact with the internet. And BSV disrupts all of that. But BTC doesn't really disrupt that
But why doesn't Bitcoin disrupt that?
because
Not as
it's
if they're
not, it only can do 7 transactions of data per second. So you can't keep the engine running.
well, why can't you if so what if it's delayed? I mean,
So you can't use it.
obviously people are doing transactions in Bitcoin.
Right. But
So
not much.
right, but
With BTC.
um so for example, why couldn't BTC I understand the scalability issue, but why couldn't BTC just simply be like a digital gold, wherein you had transactions that were wired, and then in order to pay for them, you needed the physical transfer of gold. Well, that took a long, long time, and yet we ran on the international gold standard, and it worked amazingly well as it transformed the global market as something based in a hard currency that retained its value, right? So if you just wrote receipts and then put them on the blockchain, even though you wouldn't necessarily see it like a Visa transaction in that type of speed, that might, I would suspect that, and I'm just trying to play the BTC advocate here, like someone like Safety Anonymous would say, and I obviously read his Bitcoin standard, it's on my shelf here. He's fairly convinced that scalability isn't an issue.
But that's the position they have to take. You can't be you can't really be a BTC guy and publicly admit that scalability, you have to downplay scalability being an issue.
Okay, I see.
Do you get what I'm saying? Because
Yeah. Because
BSV gets
they're obviously holding
BSV
a
gets
lot.
rid of that, and the miners are just going to say, "Oh, well, we want to mine the most." The miners are probably the most or they're probably the most agnostic to the coin
The coins are
wars.
doing.
They just want to make what's the most profitable for them.
Sure.
So you can't lose the miners. If you lose the miners, you don't really, you're not going to last much longer. So that's part of it, is that they have to say the scalability issue, it's not that big a deal. But to be truly disruptive for the internet and how we use the internet, there you can say that, oh, it's a disruption. Like, to just say it's a disruption to inflation because there's 21 million and it's set, that's not thinking big enough. And that's not that Satoshi was thinking much larger than that. He was thinking this is going to change the way we interact with each other through the internet. It's going to be what the internet was before it was created.
Okay. I remember asking you this question years ago when we first spoke of this topic. So is Craig Wright saying, as the authentic Satoshi Nakamoto, that there's a hard and fast limit to the amount of BSV coins?
Yeah, it's the same. Those are the
It's the
same.
same.
It's 21 million for each.
Okay. All right. And it can't be manipulated.
What do you mean by
You can't go in
manipulated?
and write a code that allows for the introduction of more BSV coin after let's say after the 21 million is reached.
That I would assume no, but I
Okay.
haven't looked into the tech behind that.
Okay.
Because I assume that's the same, and I think that would come up because that kind of is a big deal if you can do that. So
Right. Yeah, I mean,
that's my spiel. That's my spiel on what I believe is the court case of the century. I've been
okay.
looking into BSV for a little bit now. I
Yeah.
think that Bitcoin is the 21st century's invention. And I think my grandchildren are going to benefit so much from it, that in a similar way that I've benefited so much from the internet.
Mm.
So this is something that I care about, and it's something
Hmm.
that I've been quietly really interested about, especially over the last year.
Yeah. Well, I hope you could provide either on Twitter or we can put in the show notes some links of resources where people could find out more about the trial and then the differences between the two coins.
CoinGeek.com, Kurt Wuckert Jr.
Okay,
Those are the two best right
great.
now. Kurt's like the Dave Smith of Bitcoin.
Okay.
So we can get to a town that doesn't care too much about anything Mises said, and definitely probably doesn't care too much about Bitcoin. It's
That
meanwhile on Park.
that is an awesome segue. So here it is.
Meanwhile in Oak Park.
So we got this is River Forest again. So the River Forest Board salutes teenage DEI advocate.
Hmm.
Recognition of Anja Herman follows White House honor.
Oh, White House honor.
She went to the White House. She didn't win any championships, but she was chilling out with First Lady Dr. Jill Biden. It may not
Doctor.
have been as prestigious as being honored by First Lady Dr. Jill Biden at the White House, in parentheses, she was.
Oh God.
But Anja Herman of River Forest was recognized by her hometown village president, Kathy Aducci, for her contributions to the village diversity, equity, and inclusion advisory group at the January 22nd village board meeting. Herman was unable to attend the meeting to accept the proclamation in person, but
There were stairs.
appeared via Zoom. Quote, I want to thank the board for taking time out to issue this proclamation, said Herman, who at 17 is the youngest member of the DEI advisory group
Oh, come
and
on. She's 17 and go ahead.
and an
So
Oak Park River Forest High School senior.
she's the Greta Thunberg of DEI initiatives.
That's a great comparison.
She'll have a personal worth of about 12 million too.
It's
Never graduate high school.
the Greta Thunberg of River Forest.
Hmm.
Quote, I love working with the DEI committee, Herman said before signing off to do her homework. In the proclamation, Aducci noted that Herman was one of 15 young women leaders selected by the White House Gender Policy Council to be honored at the inaugural Girls Leading Change event in October, and congratulated her for her, quote, commitment to raising awareness about disability rights and her role as an advocate for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Trustees Erica Bachner and Ken Johnson, co-chairs of the DEI advisory group, joined Aducci in offering their congratulations. This is the quote of the night. Quote, if we listed all her accomplishments, we would be here all night, Bachner said. She always,
Patently false. Never, no one's ever said that, and they ever meant it to be true.
right. She always entertained different perspectives that I never considered, Johnson added.
Like how to sell out.
The proclamation noted that Herman joined the DEI advisory group, quote, to work with others to ensure that River Forest remains a welcoming community for generations after me.
You're 17.
The First Lady spoke near the beginning and end of the 30-minute event held on the International Day of the Girl. That's a real
International Day
day.
of the Girl.
It's a real day. Karen
Those that identify as girls, though.
Jean-Pierre, White House press secretary, and Jennifer Klein, the director of the White House Policy Council, also spoke. Herman was in Washington, D.C. for 24 hours. She went bowling with the honorees before the event. She said she started developing friendships with them and plans to keep in touch. The proclamation also noted how the White House highlighted Herman's role in, quote, grassroots disability advocacy work, including as a member of the Personal Protective Equipment for People with Disabilities Coalition. That's a real group.
Mm.
Which helps secure personal protective equipment for people with disabilities during the COVID pandemic.
Well, what what about the people who are now disabled because of the COVID pandemic?
Yeah. I don't know if there's
Or
any,
did the group just disband?
I don't know if there's a
They
coalition for
realized that the
that.
virtue signaling was going to come to an end.
Yeah, I don't think there's a coalition for that.
Mm.
In addition, the proclamation mentioned how the White House recognized Herman's authorship of, quote, a white paper that highlights the need for
That's racist.
school, a white paper that highlights the need for school shooting plans that account for the safety of students with disabilities through a fellowship program at the Disability Empower Her Network.
Oh God.
Oh, God. That sentence is insane.
Was that program like how handicapped people are going to go into schools and shoot up? Is that what it?
That's not what
Oh,
I read it as.
ooh. I misunderstood.
Highlights the need for school shooting plans that account for the safety of students with disabilities through a fellowship program. The Disability Empower Her Network. Oh, that was the end of the article.
Wow. Well, sorry, Miss Herman, you don't get a pass for being disabled and hiding behind your disability to then impose totalitarian insanity on the rest of us. And then cry that because of assorted physical challenges or disabilities that you at the same time wish to be treated as equal, which I think that's in the rearview mirror so far. You can't even see it, but that you must have special privileges, including all of these different beneficences from government, ranging from jobs to positions to laws and honors and the rest. And shame on those, shame on every one of those people from Dr. Joe Biden to Karine Jean-Pierre to the Aducci lady for doing the same thing, throwing out moronic cliches too about a 17-year-old's accomplishment and not not allowing those with disabilities to show how heroic they can, how heroically without any um preferential treatment they are able to overcome those challenges. Screw all these people.
We got one other read. I'm not going to read the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
The article reads, what does OP's Village Board have planned for 2024, 2025?
It has to do with a hammer and
Hold
a
on,
sickle.
hold on. So there's one, two, three, four, five. There's five main points. We're gonna do this Family Feud style.
All right. I'm waiting with bated breath.
So you're up first. I mean,
No.
you're the only one that's up because I
Okay,
just read
major
them.
initiatives, diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative.
Okay, so racial equity is one,
All right.
and then
What's number one?
So I don't think it's in order,
Okay.
but racial equity is one, and then vibrant, diverse, connected neighborhoods is another one. So
So I got two with
I think
one.
you got, yeah, just two in one sentence there.
Okay.
All
All
right.
right, you go ahead.
I mean, I'm reading it so I can see it. What? Keep going.
Okay, so I got to keep going.
Yeah.
Let's see. Oh gosh. Migrant safety.
No.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they're gonna get kicked out of the Carlton soon enough.
I was gonna
Once the
say
weather warms up. Let's see. greater funding for public schools.
Yeah, I mean, there's not really that, but community, actually, there's two economic ones that I didn't think you were gonna guess.
Okay.
One's economic vitality, and then the
Oh,
one is there's
program
one that
education programs.
there's one that you should totally get. Economic vitality and village affordability is actually
Oh,
community affordability.
you know who's behind that one? Our boy Ravi Parakesh.
I was looking for our boy, but
He's in the
it's actually
shadows.
it's he's working behind he's
He's
working
working
hard behind the
behind, way
scenes.
behind the scenes. Um, Man, I can't even fathom one. Ending white
Oh
supremacy.
wait, hold on. The priorities associated with this goal are removing economic barriers, limiting the tax levy, and pursuing governmental partnerships. During the Tuesday meeting, Trustee Ravi Parakat said while he agrees with most of the board goals, he wants to entertain further discussions about the 3% tax levy and financial policy in order to address affordability for the residents of Oak Park.
Oh man, this guy
He's got to come
has a
on the pod.
very
He's
short
got to
life
come
on
on the
this
pod.
thing. Um, hmm. I would say climate,
So
something with climate change.
sustainability and resiliency
Ah, okay,
is its
sustainability and
own
resilience. Yeah.
category.
So I got
In
all of them.
In climate ready Oak Park, the village's goal is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 60% by 2030 and reach net zero emissions by 2050. Okay, last one.
I
What's
can't
our
wait. Can I say that once it's cold there and everybody's mandated to have the electric cars, I can't wait to drive through with my my gas car. It'd be the only car on the street that's functioning.
right?
That'd be something.
What's the last one? What's our number one
Oh, I thought I got all five.
what's our number one priority?
Number one
Hey,
priority.
what's our number one priority?
Socialism.
No,
What?
your health and safety are our
Oh,
number one priority.
that's it. Oh my gosh. Okay. Yeah, I
Community health
thought
and
about it in the
safety.
rearview mirror.
Community health and safety. Guess what they're doing or proposing?
Uh, Education outreach.
Nope. A
Hmm.
gun buyback program
Oh, the gun buyback. Because yeah,
to
all studies
promote
show
public
that
safety.
less firearms that are owned by individuals result in greater safety for everybody else. Because we just gotta wait for the police to show up 4 minutes later. Go ahead.
Trustee Susan Buchanan said she disagrees with this program because she has seen that similar programs typically do not work. Susan Buchanan.
Why let this poor Buchanan woman like
Right
why would
winger.
she think that history would be any sort of teacher to these people?
Quote, I am not in favor of our police department developing a gun buyback program, she said. We are allowing nonprofits to have such programs. They have to come up with the money to pay for the weapons.
Ah,
Susan Buchanan and
she's
Cap.
gonna be she's gonna be sitting next to Robbie Paraket
She's gonna be
on
joining
the
us
way
with
out.
Win Lacey. We're gonna do a whole
Yeah,
round table of ex Oak Park employees.
yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Wow.
That's all from Oak Park. It was actually a more explosive week than it was from first glance.
Yeah. Well, yeah. The news from Crazy Town.
Yeah,
Thank God we're outside of it to look in.
that's
Meanwhile in Oak Park.
well, Oak Park. That's an episode, everyone.
All right. Well, um, I'll continue to be posting on Human Action with the hashtag Read Human Action, so please follow. And if you have questions or something, just shoot us something on Twitter, or you can also reach us through the website. Exciting shows coming up with Kennedy Hall in February. I've been asked to do a couple big, huge, gigantic podcasts, maybe not even American, in the coming months. So, yeah.
Yo, it isn't
Uh-huh.
what I think it is.
Oh, yeah. I think I texted you.
No,
right?
you did not.
I
No,
am
you
pretty sure I
didn't.
did.
No, you didn't. No,
All
you
right, I'll
didn't.
share off air.
You didn't tell me this. I would have remembered.
Okay. All right. Well, I have to share it off air because it's 99%. Well, it's 100% official. It's just the timing.
You totally didn't tell me this.
Okay. Is that
Anyways,
big news?
that's a cliffhanger for today.
Yeah. Okay. And then support our sponsor, our lone but very, very important and great sponsor, as we're going to see the commercialization coming up very, very shortly. Highly anticipated commercialization of everything that is produced by Trinity and Brew and the Alcorn family. So check out their website. In the meantime, we want to express our deepest thanks to all of our listeners and to whoever beat up Charlie to make his shoulder so sore.
Right. Yeah.
That
Especially then.
you didn't wince once.
I didn't.
Yeah, during your
I
shoulder.
couldn't make a right turn earlier though today. On the
Come
way
on,
back.
really?
No, I couldn't. I
Are
couldn't.
you one of these people that you have to drive with two hands?
So no, but
Okay.
it's harder. It's way harder to do one hand to the right than to the left.
What? Really? You never drove stick, did you?
No,
Nah, see. Stick, you have to do it all the time. So
I think it's way easier to pull towards the rest of your body than away.
okay, like this. All right. I don't know. I don't know, Gimp.
Yeah. All right, everyone. God
All right,
bless.
peace. God bless.